We appreciate you for listening to our space. If you want early access to rewards for our new game Surge, visit surge.metafide.io to claim your spot on the waitlist today. That's surge.metafide.io. We're excited to see you there.
How's it going, everybody out there? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Co-host Frank Speiser, CEO of Metafide. With me riding shotgun today, we have our trusty mod, Keyboard Yeti, the only person in the company to own both a boomerang and a crocodile. So how's it going today, Yeti?
Pretty good. Keeping my crocodile, my boomerang safe.
Nice, nice. That's true, by the way, correct?
Yeah. And you got to protect them from the spiders here, and the thieving kangaroos. So it's
yeah. I'm a little bit skeptical of those kangaroos, man. With the one ever since that video of the guy that had to free his dog from the kangaroo that had him in a headlock. I've been looking at kangaroos entirely differently since then. Everybody knows the one I'm talking about, right? Where the guy just socks the kangaroo in the face, which is probably inadvisable, but yeah.
We've all done it here. We've all done it.
Yeah. So, quick status on the market. We have Bitcoin, bouncing around 106, 107. It's up 0.25% over the past hour. It's up, 1.5% over the past 7 days. So it's kind of settled into a channel, and it looks like things are kind of stable for now, and Bitcoin's doing its thing. ETH is, doing pretty good. It's 2,443 US dollars per ETH right now. So DeFi looks like it's waking up, and there's a whole lot to talk about. We have, Matt is with at ETHCC. He's showing the game and getting some support for what we're doing, getting ready to go into the launch, and it's going really well. The topic of today is the future of trading is playable, and I've never been more convinced of that than I have these past few weeks, because we see these playable games coming to market. There's a few that we can talk about. Not, just being completely transparent. I got to look at what Euphoria has. I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know if you've seen it, Yeti. Have you got a chance to check it out?
No, I haven't actually checked out Euphoria. What is it they do?
It's kind of like graph bingo almost, where you're picking a box that something's gonna be in, like a spot price on a graph, and it's not the same thing that we have. Probably mildly tangentially competitive, but kind of like the concept. And I like the fact of these projects coming to market where people are gamifying trading and opening it up to people to contribute both signal and potentially win by adding some alpha to the process. I don't think, we're not one of those kind of projects that is going to try to act like we're the only ones ever to do anything like related to this, because if we were, it wouldn't necessarily be that great of an idea because we'd be the only ones walking around the wilderness doing it. However, I do think we're doing it the best, and I can't wait to bring it to the market. So it's essentially the concept of playable games for alpha. Users are competing to find prices or ranges and find out where an asset's going to be at some future point in time. And the earlier you are, the better you're correct at doing it. Sort of the higher the payout you get. We have a pretty interesting payout mechanism for spot and for range. And the idea being, users, the earlier they're correct, the more of a levered payout they're going to see. But, I was thinking when I was considering like today's topic, again, the future of trading is playable. And I don't know if that's entirely accurate, because I would say the future of trading has always been playable. It's always been a game. It just, you ain't been invited. I think that's more of an accurate assessment of where it is, where everybody's playing in this game at the top tier, where everybody's in this arms race with compute power. And I don't know if you ever read the book Flash Boys by Michael Lewis, but it talks about the setting up really quick fiber optic networks and playing essentially these really short-term movements in the equities market. And it's a great book. If you haven't, I think I've read every single one of Michael Lewis's books. He wrote Moneyball, he wrote Liar's Poker, and there's that guy's a great storyteller. And I think Flash Boys, if you get a chance to check it out, it'll explain sort of what's going on. It was also the basis for the movie The Big Short with Steve Carell. I don't know if you got. Did you ever see that one, Yeti?
Yeah, I did. I not for a while, but yeah, I did see it around the time of after Wolf of Wall Street came out, and I was looking for one similar to it. I watched it.
Yeah, I used to run an options newsletter where people could subscribe to it, and we would send out recommendations for which options were undervalued, and use some alpha to try to predict those things. And that was pretty good. And I was doing that I think I started in 2005 because I thought from 2005, I thought the real estate market was overvalued. And just like those guys in the movie The Big Short, where they're meeting exotic dancers and waitresses and stuff like that who were buying their third home and extending their credit. I remember meeting some people being like, wait a second, like this doesn't seem like this is going to be viable long term. Like, let me start trying to figure out where the market's headed. And we did that. I also like it's sort of a tangent to that. I used to take the price feeds for the day, and I would assess where they were, and I'd run a calculation, and I would send an automated newsletter out. And the way I named the files was basically a date format. And I remember I went out and I got a new phone, and the phone that I was using was taking pictures and using the similar date format. And I was using sort of a regular expression to match on the file name. And at the time I was married and living downtown in New York. And what I wound up doing essentially one day is, instead of sending out a file with all of the picks for the day, I wound up actually sending a picture of my wife coming back from the gym, and instead of sending a list of things, like I sent a post gym picture to a list of about 1,500 subscribers, and I have to say that really made me think twice about sort of double checking and the testing process. And stuff. I don't necessarily recommend doing that. But
You didn't tell them to short it, did you?
No, come on,
No.
man. No, that was definitely one of the mistakes that made me be like, yeah, I should probably be pretty careful about this going forward. So yeah, which in general, like, having care around the market's not necessarily a bad idea. And using these games, not just you contributing alpha, but Matt likes to talk about this all the time, where we've started to notice certain characteristics of Bitcoin's behavior from playing in these games so much. So you kind of start realizing where the support and where the resistance is in these assets as you're playing the game. And it actually makes you a better trader. Like, you can start to understand, like, okay, when it hits here, I'm going to get in, and when it hits here, I'm going to get out. And you can scalp it with some automated work, but you can also kind of learn, just sort of be like, all right, let me look at this asset for a couple of minutes. And when you get really familiar with it, humans are pretty good at figuring out where the bottom of a range and where the top of a range are, especially in small intervals. So that's maybe another point towards the concept of gamifying these things, where you want to make sure you're paying attention to that stuff to become a better game player, but also become a better trader. So, I think we're starting to blur the lines between, essentially what is trading, right? You're keeping score with money. You're trying to figure out, you want to get it at the lowest price possible and sell it at the highest price possible. It's got all the same mechanics as games. So to my earlier point, people have been playing these games for a long time. It's just been somewhat inaccessible to a bigger audience, which, in terms of allowing access to, I mean, I'm in there with the common folks, like as far as like how to make it make sense to common people instead of just the Wall Street elite. Like I think this is the answer sort of going forward. And the more we make it feel comfortable and be able to get in and get up and running, I think that's sort of the goal of sort of what we're doing over the next year here. So you've been involved with the game since the very beginning. I mean, what are you sort of seeing as people are coming into the game and getting up and playing? Like what's the general feeling or sort of feedback when someone comes in from a cold start to become a regular player of these games? So yeah.
Yeah, well, it seems like people have been grasping it fairly easy. I mean, the onboarding process is really simple. It's great. You can just sign in with Discord or Google, and given that most of the people are coming from Discord, it's been a smooth onboarding process. And as to what you were saying before as well, it's like about that it's always been kind of gamified trading, but we're opening up that access to people. I can't stress that bit enough, really. It's not just about the access of it, that it's kind of easy to do, but also that people can get in there without having the connections, without having those kind of nepotistic kind of family connections or corporate connections, and without having the capital requirements as well. So people can get started with as little as $1 or whatever it is. They can kind of get involved at whatever level they choose to be involved at. And so, opening up that access is just a huge part of what makes it such an important part of the future. And as you were saying before as well about that, is it Euphoria, the project that you said?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, and about them, they're a competitor, but the space is going to be so huge. Like it's a new kind of genre opening up, and there'll definitely be enough room for us and them and a whole bunch of other really successful projects in the space. So, I definitely don't feel threatened by other projects entering into the space.
So I want to be really careful about how I say this. So what we're doing is precisely not gambling, right? Where you're competing for skill to add alpha to a system. There's a way to get better at it. It's not random chance. Like you have control over your outcome. But if you look at the number of people putting real money into online games, I think that market is about 153 billion right now, right? And essentially, we're making a sport out of trading. If you kind of think what we're actually doing, and why that hasn't been a thing earlier, I think it points to sort of a flaw with the system in general, where they don't want competition, right? They being the moneyed elites at the top of this thing, like they don't necessarily want people to be really good at figuring this out. And when we look at what we're trying to solve, when we take a zoomed out view of it, is I want to make a bunch of people that are better at trading than people sitting at desks on Wall Street. I want to make hundreds of thousands of people who can outcompete, people sitting in skyscrapers in New York and in London and in Singapore and in Hong Kong. Like I want to make a global distributed network of people who are really good at beating the hell out of those people. And then I want to take those people that are really serious about competing and actually want to prove that they're good and put them in this and turn them loose and say, okay, like now the playing field's level and you can all go out and compete with a set of tools, because we're going to start, we have the AI line in these products. We have a bunch of tools on the back of this that are going to help people, make the most out of compounding interest and sweeps and stuff like that. So you can stash your winnings while you sleep, and it can work for you and things like that. So the idea being, it doesn't need to be a place where you met somebody at prep school, or you and your buddy's dad, took a private jet to play golf somewhere and you traded a couple tips and cut each other in on a deal. And again, that's not the whole thing. I don't want to make just a caricature out of the people on Wall Street. There's a lot of really great traders in that community, and people are actually trying to find real value that do benefit people and make great products and try to figure it out early. But I think the general thing, when we look at what's happened to crypto and what's happened to Web3, there's also been a bunch of hangers on, just people trying to pull as much money out as they can that don't really care about, the building the future, because they're just caught up in this money grab, right? And so what I think makes sense is to let's get people aligned in a sort of environment where everybody's competing with the same high-powered tools, or with at least with access to their own competitive set of high-powered tools that are helping guide them, and then use human intuition and sort of the last mile of training that data set to get the most out of the system, right? And then, just in full transparency, it's in there in our light paper, and we talk about it all the time. We're taking this signal and then trading the market with it. So it's going into, we're putting our, essentially our money where our mouth is, and then going out and trading the market and making sure we're, essentially scalping volatility, or however you want to phrase it, whatever you want to do to denigrate it, we're doing that. And we're making sure that we sort of pull real value out of the market so that we can keep building things of value to share back with the people who are adding the alpha into the system. And I think as long as people trust us to keep doing that, then that's the plan for what Metafide is about. That's what we want to bring to everybody. And so as everybody's playing these global games and everybody's contributing this signal, let's keep finding interesting ways to reward people for doing that. What that probably looks like, when you take a look at, 5 years out, is there's going to be people who are building funds on the back of what we're doing. There's going to be people who are copy trading what we're doing. There's going to be new exchange products, like new kind of financial instruments and stuff like that that are well on the way, that we're actually working on. I have a meeting tomorrow, actually, that I'm calling into, where I'm walking through with the Office of the Attorney General here. Essentially, this is what I want to do, and I want to bring this and put this in place here in South Carolina, where I live, so that there's a global AI derivatives market based on the signals that we're getting out of these games, and not just us, but other platforms that have other interesting games will be able to list their derivatives on our exchange. Essentially, that's the future, and that's some alpha for the community out there that I know that they tune in for. But you're taking part in not just these games, but you're going to have the ability to gain access and to gain value from the value that these exchanges and our future fund generates. So, I'm really looking forward to do that kind of stuff. Does that sound interesting? Do you think that's interesting to the people that you're talking to?
That is so cool. I mean, we haven't discussed that with the community, but that is, I guarantee you that they will be excited by that. I mean, that is very, very exciting. It's the whole crypto legislation stuff coming in and having the founder of the project, the CEO of the project, so heavily involved in the formation of that can only be good for the project. That's
and to their own credit, like they're really listening because they want to get it right. They see the opportunity to actually get involved in the next iteration of the way finance works. And this is a big one because the concept of DeFi and decentralized markets is by definition non-hierarchical. And I'm going to go down I'm going to take a tangent here real quick, but people need to understand the way that central banks create money is they basically issue credit money that goes into the system at the London International Banking Overnight Rate, LIBOR. It's called a LIBOR window. And every day, the money supply will get issued. And these banks around the LIBOR window, you have to know somebody, you have to be tied in, you have to be favored that you get access to that money. And then you turn around and lend it out. So you borrow it at the LIBOR rate, and then you turn around and lend it out at that plus a markup. So when it moves from M2 to M3 money, it's marked up again. So you have M1, M2, M3. Those are sort of tranches of money that as they echo out from the issuance of the central bank credit. And then that gets turned around and lent out at a rate. And what happens is that kind of works until people make really risky and increasingly riskier investments or start to deplete opportunities and just throw too much money into them where it's not able to pay back the promise of the interest on it. And then you get these credit crunches where you can't fulfill and you can't service the credit that you've been given. So the market expands until it gets to a point where everybody's made so much risk introduced so much risk in their investments that they can't service it coming down to them. And so when it's time for them to make their interest payment, they can't do it. And then it cascades through the banking system. And essentially the fix is that they have to print more money, which if you're out there and you're not one of these banks with easy access to credit, you actually only have the choice of seeing the money that you still have devalued because they just print a bunch more of it and it goes into the system. So that hierarchical system really, it's probably not fair. I think that's the one thing. So if you have to work 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, like a lot of Americans here do, and you take 2 weeks of vacation, you take a 50-week work year, and you say you're able to save, 1,000 of those hours. Well, that's too much. Let's say you could save 200 of your hours, right? What you don't want is somebody to print money that you saved from working and then devalue the hours that you took off, so that at the end of the year, the 200 hours that you worked have been bailed out to the tune of devaluing your savings by 25%. So you save 200 hours because you're really dialed in about your finances, but you only get to spend 150 if you spend it the next year. And then they keep devaluing it. It's just not fair to people. And the more you go down that rabbit hole of figuring out how the central bank issuance works, the more you're just like, look, this doesn't seem like it's going to work for people. And so, without spending the entire time on my soapbox here, what we want to do is figure out a way for people to share in the upside that credit cycle creates, and then hopefully bring it back into these opportunities to participate in the actual transaction of that ecosystem, and then through an exchange and through a fund that we're forming. But the real value in this is, at the end of that, getting to a point where we have a real world asset piece that we're investing directly back into, and a way to ensure it that makes sense for people. So that's the long-term value of what we're sort of driving towards. That's the that's the most I've given people a glimpse into our roadmap is that's where we're heading with this. And the way we get there is we have to have fun doing it. So build these fun games, have everybody participate in a way that's not alien to them, give them a good time, give them upside and reward for the alpha that they're contributing, and then get it into a system where we're sort of investing in each other, so we can understand to put the money back into people doing real work on the ground, people building real things that are of lasting value, people making food, making stuff for other people. I think that's the general arc of what we're doing. But we're right now at the most fun part of, maybe not the most rewarding part when we look back at what we've done, but this is the most fun, where we get to think of ways to gamify the experience of going about changing all that. So, I don't take that for granted, because this is one of those times where we'll look back and say, like, our job was to come to work and think of things that are funny, hilarious, like, avant-garde, or sort of maybe a little bit unprofessional about the way you go about doing this, but it's fun to do. And then keep doing that, rinse, repeat, and get really good at that signal piece. And then sharing with the people who are creating that signal. I think that's the first time, and that's, as far as I'm aware of, this is the first time that I've ever seen a system that tries to reward the signal instead of treating people like data, right? Where you're just trying to trick people into giving you data and demographic data. Like Web 2, as much as people talk about how off Web 2 was, or how off Web 3 is, with all these, irresponsible projects and people rugging projects, nobody got to share in the creation of Web 2 except the companies who were aggregating the data. And I think that's been a thing that's been overlooked, where you didn't get a single bit of value except for the use of the products out of the Web 2 side. I think Web 3 can correct that by sharing back the value that people are creating. And since there's a token system that underpins it, you can directly assign the value to the people who hold the wallets where the tokens came from. And if anybody asks you, well, why Web 3? There you go. Like, that's why Web 3. Like, it's not some click where you have to speak a bunch of nerd speak to get in there. And we've done a lot of work into removing the overhead, into getting people in and making it smooth as possible. And I think that's been sort of under prioritized for a couple of years now, but now's the time. And these big companies, like, when are you going to see the next Facebook, next Google, next Amazon? I think you'll start to see that type of value creation now that we sort of have the infrastructure and we're building apps on top of the infrastructure. So yeah, anything to say to that as we get to finish up here, man?
Yeah, I guess just like reiterating that point about how the importance of fun in bringing on the next wave of people and introducing them into the finance system, kind of stripping out the complexity and elitism and offering rewards for people while they have a fun experience playing the games is, to me, that's how we onboard the next wave of people into financial markets. So yeah, I just love it. I agree with everything you said there.
Yeah, I'm not talking about showing up with a hammer and a sickle and all my comrades go out and just are constant revolutionaries. Like, I'm not saying that. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying maybe there's a different way. Like, maybe the concept of mandating the way you go about fixing this isn't the right thing at all. And that maybe that figuring it out together and getting there in a way that isn't exactly the current system and isn't exactly the proposed alternative, maybe we should take a look at doing that, because I don't think either one of those two are working that great right now. So with that, I'm going to put a pin in it. We'll throw the next grenade on the next one, which is Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And everybody get your questions in. We're going to try to answer some questions on the next one. So I'm looking forward to those. I want to thank Yeti for jumping on here with me as Matt's over there and Surge is off to his next thing. So great to see everybody. And again, make sure you're on the Discord, discord.gg/FIDE-token. Make sure it's the real one. Follow us at FIDE_AI on X. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, just at Metafide. So see everybody there and see everybody on the next one. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Frank.
Later.
We appreciate you for listening to our space. If you want early access to rewards for our new game Surge, visit surge.metafide.io to claim your spot on the waitlist today. That's surge.metafide.io. We're excited to see you there.